Yeah, ready. Cool. All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get this listening session started. It is 6:02 p.m. and my name's Charles Grimm. I'm a newly elected Pasco City Council member, and also I am accompanied here by Leo Perales, also a newly elected council member. And so we are here to learn. We are here to listen and really take this back to the council as a whole. We have members of staff here, our interim director Sarah. We have our economic development director, Mr. Gonzalez, and also our deputy city manager, Richa, is here. So if there's a possibility of answering a question or providing some more background, we would love to, but some of this, we're just here to listen and take back to the group at large. And, I don't even know that this is going to be the end of it tonight. We'll probably do this again to really try to learn and understand, what really happened before at least our time on the council here. So, with that, I believe Interim Director Sarah is going to make a presentation, and then we're just going to open it up, you guys. We haven't even really set a time limit for comments or anything like that. We both just checked in to listen. So just for the sake of everybody else, be succinct as possible, but we have no obligations other than to listen to you tonight. So thank you.
Okay, we're going to get started with our presentation. Many of you have already seen this presentation. We're going over the same information or very similar information to what was presented in prior council meetings. Let's see if I can make it work. And to get started, we wanted to give some context on what does our comprehensive plan says about water rights, and for that, Director Gonzalez will walk us through that.
Thank you, and good evening, council and members of the public. Wanted to start again with sort of a basic overview of some of the various goals and policies that are from the Pasco adopted comprehensive plan, which was adopted in June of 2021. The comprehensive plan is a state-mandated growth management document with several required elements, including capital facilities and utilities. On the slide before you, we wanted to highlight three separate references to the water rights discussion. And those being in the capital facilities element, goal number 4 is to acquire adequate water rights for future needs. At the time of the development of the Pasco Comprehensive Plan, there was an expected growth of roughly 45,000 residents or so by the year 2038. That since has been increased, as we know. And so the intent was to ensure that there was an acquisition of water rights to accommodate that growth. The capital facilities policy 4A indicates that the city shall ensure the acquisition of water rights commensurate with the city's planned development and need for water in the residential, commercial, industrial, and other urban uses. And further on, policy 4B for capital facilities is to ensure that new developments utilizing the city water transfer to the city any existing water rights associated with the properties being developed. In absence of any existing water rights, the development shall pay for the acquisition fees to the city. And then lastly, for the utilities element, goal number 1 states that the city shall provide adequate utility services to the urban growth area to assure that the anticipated 20-year growth is accommodated with the necessary infrastructure. And under the utilities element, policy 1A is to ensure that the public water and sewer services are available concurrently with the development in the urban growth area. So these are several these are a few of the many goals and policies out of the adopted comprehensive plan. These specific goals and policies are with direct reference to the water rights discussion. So with that, I'll pass it on to Director Sarah.
Thank you. With that, we're going to now oversee the types of water rights the city of Pasco has. And as you likely have seen before, City of Pasco manages potable water rights, which are surface withdrawal rights, irrigation water rights, which are a combination of surface and well withdrawal rights, including 508.14 rights, which really denotes a certain region within City of Pasco, and actually Franklin County. And finally, PWRF irrigation water, which is related to the industrial facility the city owns and operates north of city limits. So diving deeper into each of those kinds, water rights for municipal, as it's shown here, and I must say this is really intended to focus on potable rights. Those allow for draw from the Columbia River. We currently have available 18,883 acre feet per year, and the usage in 2022 was 15,873. We know 2023 numbers preliminary that demand has increased, so we're in the order of 16.6 for 2023. Now, this number, 18,883, includes the two lease amounts from Department of Ecology. And in the next slide, I will show you basically how we are accounting for those rights and how we look at our usage. So right here, what you're seeing in blue are those ecology leased water rights, and then the remainder of the municipal potable water rights with their own certificate numbers and then usage. Similarly, on the irrigation side of things, those water rights are a combination, as we said, groundwater and withdrawal from the Columbia River. There's available around 8,660 acre feet. These numbers are from 2022. Some of those rights have been transferred to be able to be used without limits in which location that draw is happening from wells. So there's been some adjustments to that available number, but it's not significant. And you're seeing the breakdown between what is groundwater, what is Columbia River water, and what is 508.14s. And then usage in 2022, 10,498 acre feet. Did I say 98? 10,490 acre feet, which now know for 2023 is in the order of 11,000. So a little increase in there as well. And again, this is the way we are tracking the use of those water rights, which water rights we have. This is just a spreadsheet. And so ultimately where we want to get is to look at what amount of water rights is being used of what we have available and how much is remaining. So these numbers are, again, 2022 numbers that have been vetted. And here what we're seeing is between municipal and irrigation. Municipal, so potable, has a surplus, a small surplus in 2022. Irrigation is slightly over, and between the two, the ultimate remaining balance is 1,180 acre feet. And this number will come back when we do some calculations of what can be served, how many ERUs or equivalent residential units can be served with this number. But for now, we're trying to walk in order in our presentation. Okay, finally, we'll talk about PWRF, or industrial wastewater facility, or irrigation water for the land treatment system. Again, this is separate from anything within city limits, but this is just showing you what is the portfolio for City of Pasco. Again, these ones do not interact with the other water rights at this time. And again, we track those similarly to the previous sets. Okay, and now we can dive a little bit deeper on where those water rights needs and regulations are specified in our Pasco Municipal Code, the PMC. And so there's two sections in two different chapters where those are mentioned, and it has to do with water and sewer service, and it has to do with subdivision of land. And in addition to that, there is also the need to determine market value for the payment in lieu of transferring those water rights. And so this is within the responsibilities of the city engineer. So historically, we've seen that developers prefer to pay in lieu of transferring those water rights, and that is for those cases where developers have land that has water rights. Those existing rights in the land were typically being transferred out of that land prior to development, which then deemed the land having no water rights available to be transferred, therefore triggering that payment in lieu. Additionally, those water rights that were being removed from the land prior to development were being sold at market rate, and the existing rights were either, as I said, sold or banked in a different location for later transfer or sale. Okay, in November of 2023, City Council approved changes to that PMCs via an ordinance, and those changes became effective in December of 2023, and those had to do with both transfer of potable and irrigation water rights. The need to transfer potable and irrigation rights applies to commercial developments, such as industrial users, food processors, schools, and residential, right? And instead of mentioning the extension of water lines as a triggering factor for that transfer, is really the water usage or water need, the demand. These adopted PMC changes apply to properties within city limits and beyond city limits within UGA, and the changes included an increase to the market rate, so that payment in lieu was now established at $4,150 per acre foot. This increase in rate encourages the transfer of water rights. And then for those properties which rights were removed within the last 10 years from the time of development, a surcharge is established at 50%. And what this does is accounts for future value increases in that water right, an incentive, and encourages, again, it's an incentive to transfer the water rights instead of paying an in lieu fee. We will discuss what communications have taken place, and so these are communications that happen regarding the changes to the PMC, proposed changes at that time. In October of 2023, there were a council workshop, a developer meeting, followed by a regular council meeting in late November. There were handouts developed, and we're seeing a little snippet of one of those handouts. Handouts were developed and distributed in late December. We reached out to the developers that we had contacts for. We made this documentation available online in the city website. We used social media. We made this information available in City Hall in locations where people typically would do transactions. Additionally, there were social media posts, as I mentioned, and radio interviews to let people know of the change, also allow for comment in upcoming meetings. There was a council meeting in January 8th where comment was received and was encouraged. And then more recently, we've done outreach regarding this meeting, including, again, website, online information, social media, radio interview on Monday. So plenty of outreach has occurred. And so if we want to look again at how water rights fees are assessed based on the PMC, here's how it works. So in lieu fees are required when a development is to occur and there are no water rights to be transferred to the city. That in lieu fee is established at market value and effective since December of 2023 at $4,150 per acre foot. Now, irrigation water is calculated for each development based on 50% of the site, and this is specific to residential, 50% of the site at 3.5 acre-foot demand per year per acre, right? This is what we have established as an average of demand for irrigation needs. And this is considering a site where there is likely a house to be built. Half of that site would be landscape and irrigated. And then for potable water, the estimation is, and it's established in the PMC, so then it's applied, is 0.3 acre-feet per residential unit. And on top of this, there is a very small transfer fee, which is ecology fee to allow for the transfer to occur. Okay, I can walk you through the math here so that it's a little bit clearer how that fee is assessed specifically for residential. So say we had an acre site, a 1 acre site where 4 units are to be developed. So we're assuming that there is no loss to right away or any other things for the simplicity of the calculation. So we're talking about 4 parcels that are 1/4 acre lots. So irrigation needs is calculated at that 1/4 acre times 50% times the 3.5 acre-feet per each acre, which in this case is 0.25, right? And so the demand, the need for water rights is 0.4375 acre-feet per unit. So we're going to make this calculation per each unit. Now potable, we already established that is 0.3 acre-feet per unit. So now adding the 2 needs, each unit requires a total of 0.7375 acre units. And now if we multiply that by the 4 sites that we have in this 1 acre, we arrive to a total of water rights needed to be transferred or paid in lieu if transfer is not available of 2.95 acre-feet. And now if we look at what is the cost for that in lieu fee, should water rights not be transferred, we are looking at $12,000, $242.50. Okay, similarly, if we were to compare different calculation, we've done the same calculation for, say, 11 units per acre, which is more in line with the increased intensity we are seeing. So in here, what you're seeing is the 11 units per acre have more demand on the potable side, right? There's more potable little units needing that 0.3 and then smaller irrigation. So it's not 1-to-1 that change. It's not when you have 11 lots in 1 acre, you can't use the math that was prepared for the 4 acres, right? So now going back to the number we had seen in red earlier and understanding what the need for these different types of development. So with 1,180 acre-feet left available for the city, if all development were to occur in 1/4 acre units, we would be able to serve 1,600 units. Now, if development instead were to all be, for example, 11 units per acre, then we would be able to serve 2,500 units, and I'm rounding, so it's 2,545 units with that remaining available water rights. And again, those numbers are 2022 available water rights. We now know we're closer to having reached the limit of our water rights. So understanding that what our available water rights remaining to serve development, should we not receive any transfer of water rights, is, as you see in 11 units per acre at 2,500. We are showing you also at the bottom of the screen what is the number of units we anticipate needing in the next 20 years. And that number is 23,000 units. Again, I'm rounding, 23,318 units. So there is a big delta between water rights available and water rights needed, or units that can be served. Okay, if we transfer those number of units into acre-feet needed, and again, I'm using the 11 units per acre density just because that's the tendency, the trend we're seeing in development, we would be looking at 10,794 acre feet. That's what is needed in order to support development in the next 20 years. Okay, so with this math having done and trying to walk you through how the math is done in detail, we also wanted to show you what is the impact to development in a per unit detail. So what we are seeing is 4 units per acre require a payment of $1,794, and then if it was 4 units per acre, that number is $1,115 per unit. And then the total increase we are seeing is in the order of 2,425 per acre foot, right? That is the increase between the 1725 fee that we had before and the new fee at 4150. And so this, what you're seeing right there under the developer subtitle, has to do with what is the increase based on the new fee for each of those units. That is the impact to the single unit in your development. And then if we were to not require the increased payment or increased fee, the impact to the remainder of the customer base, so the whole group of ratepayers receiving service from the city on water would have to pay for the need to acquire water rights. And so that translates back to $4 per month increase for each $1 million spent to purchase water rights, right? This is and is assuming that this expenditure is being bonded, so there is some level of interest, built into our calculation. So, as an example, a recent offer that we had was for some water rights in the order of 2,100 acre feet. The negotiated value was 3,850 acre foot, which results in $8 million, $8.3 million. So you can see how that purchase could have had, what kind of impact it would have had in the whole group of ratepayers paying for water, not just those that are creating the new demand. And with that, we've finished our presentation. I hope I didn't walk you through it too fast. We're happy to address any simple questions on this.
Thank you, Interim Director Sarah. At this time, we're just going to open up the floor again. If you have comments, I mean, we are here to listen. Maybe, I don't know, just looking at the size of the room and the clock, we're here to listen, but maybe a little closer to 5 minutes. If you have more of a formal presentation, take longer than that. Take 10 minutes or whatever, you think. We are here to listen. What I've heard from you and visiting with some of you and from the city is we can all agree that the city needs water to grow. That is important. And then the city needs the developers, and developers need the city. The developers need a thriving city to invest in, to make money. And at the same point, the city needs developers to help build the city. So we do need each other, but we also need water to do all this. So, with that said, I appreciate staff being here, and, if there's questions that they can answer, we're happy to do so. But a lot of this is just taking back, so we can just cogitate on this some more and visit with other council members and see if we can just figure this out. And so that's what we're looking for. State your name. You're a stakeholder, give us your investment in this, just so we know the perspective you're coming from, whether you're developer or farming, so we can really just try to understand this the best we can. So, Councilman Perales, do you have anything before we?
Well, I mean, I have questions of my own still that I would still like to get answered. I guess I'll go ahead and start it off. I still just don't understand why we're doing a 50% surcharge Maybe individuals 9 years ago, 8 years ago didn't know we were going to do this. So I really just feel like that's punitive, and I just really I have not been moved by any answers I've heard. And I still feel like we need to evaluate the numbers and the water available. We have individuals who are willing to lease to us, sell to us. We still have that gap. I feel like there's a happy medium. We just haven't gotten there yet. So I'll go ahead and open that up with, I just don't get why we're doing a 50% surcharge, which equals about $6,000 per acre foot. And I'll start with that question. Then also, for the example, that would make sense if we're built 2,500 units in a year. Have we ever built 2,500 units in a year in Pasco?
No.
So, I don't know. I understand that we're trying to put away money for the future, but if we're not even touching 2,500, I think the last numbers I saw, we were barely doing like 230, 240. I don't know how you calculate apartments and things like that, but the numbers I saw from the Home Builder Association, we were barely at 240 homes a year. Housing has not increased that much to the point where I believe we're in dire straits for water. It's still an issue we need to look at. That's just my perspective on it. But again, I just have not seen an answer yet as to why we need to have a 50% surcharge. So if you could answer and enlighten us.
Councilmember Perales, the 50% surcharge at the time when we had discussion in 2023 was a surcharge that the city has traditionally used for some of the other utilities, especially when you're looking at services outside of the city limits. So I believe that is a surcharge that was utilized. There was discussion on what exactly that surcharge should be. We ended at 50%. However, definitely up to council on setting that policy and what that should be. The idea behind a surcharge or any surcharge is this idea that water rights over the next decade will be increasing in price. And so as we're collecting the funds, and holding on to it, because it is a restricted fund that the city cannot utilize for any other purposes. And so you're holding on to these funds, and as you're getting to that point of being able to purchase water rights, it's very likely that those prices that we are estimating at this time will be increased at that point. But definitely a surcharge that can be discussed and revised as per council's direction.
Go ahead.
That's why I like talking about these things, because I just feel like if someone's going to develop a piece of property out there, the developer's having conversations with the city. That's when you'd probably have the conversation about water. Are you going to pay the in lieu fee? We encourage you to transfer it to us. That's why I almost feel like the surcharge is not really needed, other than if someone wants to not develop it and wait and sell their rights. I get it. So the water rights I look at it almost as like a stock. That's right, because you can sell it on the market for a little bit more. I think that's a conversation we need to have with individuals who own it. But at the same time, I don't like telling people to do with their property and their money. So that's why I say we need to kind of figure out. To me, that's like the biggest issue that I've noted, along with xeriscaping. I want to. We need to talk about water conservation, which we haven't even really talked about. It's troubling to see that we're using a lot of potable water for irrigation, and we've talked about it, but that needs to be addressed. That's water that could be used for homes. So, there's a multitude of things, and, that's why we're here. We want to hear from the development community, residents, how to correct this. Again, the information you give us, we'll be able to provide some recommendations for the council. I know I truly do believe a lot of things in regards to this needs to get changed or amended, but we need to hear from the public so that we can make those recommendations to city council and staff. So,
And with that, we will open it up, and anything you guys have that, you think would be helpful to us, this is the time to share. By all means, please, of what you think is more fair, how we can preserve to make sure the city has water, but yet at the same time alleviate some of your concerns. So with that, whoever wants to go first. And again, just state your name and just what you're representing or what your perspective is coming from would be really helpful, at least for us.
John Schlein with B4 Development and Consulting here in Pasco. I may get up and down here a couple of times, but the first question is regarding what we just heard about the surcharge. I do agree with you, Councilman Perales. The question I have for the description you gave is, you said that there's a surcharge for other utilities. Well, in this case, you're being charged for something you have sold or transferred the rights to within 10 years. How do you sell a sewer system or a power system? Explain how that correlates with what we're talking about with this surcharge, if you could.
And not necessarily direct correlation, but in terms of a surcharge and where the 50% came from, that was the thought behind how do we move forward in terms of it's a surcharge to discourage transfer, essentially. So as we are moving forward into the future, how do we encourage more transfer to the city? Because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily that we need to collect more money. We need to just have water rights to be able to serve the community.
Gotcha. So I still feel like it's punitive, as you were saying, and the surcharge is probably the biggest thing that our clients talk about in this perspective too. Is, we have large landowners that own also large quantities of water rights, and we represent the 2,147 offer that we have put on the table, and we actually have another landowner that just came to us representing another at least 300, and those are coming to light because they've set the market value so high, and so the city has said the market value now is $41.50. So they were paying $17.50. Now they're paying $41.50. Well, now we have landowners coming and saying, we'd like to go ahead and sell to the city, and it's taken the city, it sounds like almost 6 months before we'll be able to make that sale final. If they're really desperate, like what we're being presented, we should get moving on this real quick, and let's sell some of these. And we do have landowners and water rights owners that want to sell, and so instead of charging a surcharge, let's allow this process to go on. I mean, we represent almost 15% additional water rights than what they currently have that we're willing to sell to them. And so I'd like for that to be a consideration in all of this too.
Okay, thank you, John. I invite anybody else. Don't be shy. Yeah, come on up. And again, just your name and maybe perspective would be helpful for Councilmember Perales and I. Thank you.
Alan Oberding. I'm a farmer north of town. So, getting back to that gentleman's question, how much, if you want so many acre feet of water, what's the limit that you want? 20,000 acre feet? Or, like he says, he's got enough to supply you. Okay, so if I have some I want to sell, what's the cutoff amount?
It really depends on the growth patterns and also the money that we will have to be able to afford it.
Okay, so if he takes 100% of the sale, which, these are just examples, can I go out and sell my water to somebody else without getting charged?
Can you say that again?
Okay, so the gentleman, he said, I believe he said that you had enough people that would.
We have about 2,500 acres.
Yeah. So if 2,500 is your number, and I've got let's say $750 to sell, and you don't want it, can I go sell it to somebody else without being charged for it?
Would you be developing?
Pardon me?
Would you be developing on the land?
It would be development.
Yeah, and so with development, we would need water rights to be able to serve that development. And so very likely, as we're looking at different parts of the city as they're growing, it depends on whether those developments come with their own city rights or water rights or not. And so if you have water rights on that property and you're proposing to develop, our preference would be that you transfer those water rights to us so that we can serve the housing or whatever you're developing within that property. We would keep, let's say we purchase some other rights that we have additional to, then we would use that for properties in the city that might not have water rights, that we would still need to have water rights to serve that development. So we would be buying it, essentially the developer would be paying for that, and we would be buying the water rights there. Does that make it clear?
No.
So, Alan,
We
if I
can
can just
chat.
clarify, I
Yeah.
think what he's asking is if the city is satisfied with all the water rights we need, are you basically asking, would we then?
Exactly, yeah.
Would we sunset this 50% fee or do away with it, is I
Yes.
think kind of where he's going. If we have all the water we need, and I think that would really just be up to the legislative body at that point.
Yeah, the number theoretically is a little over 10,000 acre feet, right, that we need for the 23,000 units.
For the next 20 years, correct?
You know, I think the water is out there somewhere, and that's what it seems like from the numbers. I mean, I pulled it up. Supposedly we have about 4,000 acre feet from potential leases. We can lease out water. You know, that would be able to pay that. I believe there's 2,500 back there that they're willing to sell, and then we kind of have that surplus that's kind of fluctuating. I mean, that comes out to almost like 7,000 acre feet. So I mean, I think there's water out there. I mean, that's why. But I think the thing I really don't want to bring it up is this could be avoided. So if you had a development and then say you could just transfer the water rights to the city and don't sell them, I mean, that would probably be the preferred from the city standpoint, right? It's just be a direct transfer and.
Our preference is always for transfer of city water rights so that the city can serve that development for that property.
Okay.
That is the number one preference. In fact, it is harder to find water rights and to be able to buy water rights out there. And we don't want we don't know what will happen in the future. So it is better for us and a preference of the city that the water rights get transferred as the property is getting developed.
Okay. And then when you talked about 11 units per acre, was that apartments? Or is that's not,
No, that is not apartments. That is dense development. Apartments are much higher density.
okay.
They have less irrigation, but a lot more potable demand.
Okay, I guess I don't see 11 units per acre of houses on a development, but that's not for me to say. So on the processed water that goes out there, is that mixed with potable water before it's put on the ground, or is it 100% processed?
No, it's mixed with well water.
It is.
It is.
Okay. No, I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olverding.
Hi guys, James Sexton, JMS Construction and Development, Pasco. Trying to clear up some of the things that these guys were saying is that if I buy a piece of property tomorrow and the farmer sold the water rights 8 years ago, I have nothing in control of that. And now being the developer, you are going to give me a 50% surcharge on something that he did 8 years ago and I had no control of. Right? That's where I think the 50% surcharge problem. Now, if I'm the developer and I buy the land and sell off the water rights and go to the city going, yeah, I can get them cheaper from you, then I understand that, right? But there's a gap missing there. And then in your guys' math, you're also not calculating the urban growth development foot acres of water that are going to be developed that have water rights that will be given to the city. And I didn't see that calculation in there either, right? So there's actual foot acres of water coming to the city as we're developing, right? Because that's the way developers work, right? And that calculation's not currently in there. So the urban growth development you guys just did was a few acres, and that came with water rights that can be transferred to the city. You guys just haven't approached those landowners yet. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sexton. Come on up. I know there's a wealth of information out there.
Councilman, staff, Matt Heyer, Association of Realtors. I've had a lot of discussions over the past few months with a lot of different stakeholders, citizens, people in Pasco about this. Fact checked some of the findings with folks up at Washington Realtors, and every single person came back and said that Pasco consultant did a great job because 4150 was within, I think, $10 of some of our own studies we did, which stinks because based off of your math on that previous slide, you're looking at just kind of crunch numbers real quick, and I'm not sure if staff has done this, but it looks like for a quarter acre lot with a single family home, a $5,000 increase to the developer that'll be passed on to the homeowner. Have you done any kind of research just into like the basic home and that added cost, what it would look like?
The calculation was a lot lower than 5,000. I'm trying to move back my slides, but they're not responding.
And that's the increase from the 17 that it was. I mean, let's just call it 5,000. I might have been off by a few bucks, but 5,000. When you're talking about that with council and the decision makers, and some of these individuals are not locked into the housing industry, right? And they're making kind of high level decisions. I think that what's the end user result? That should be kind of baked into the presentation, and then an asterisk underneath that says for every $1,000 of home increase in Benton County, 86 families will be priced out of a home. So just let them know when they're making that decision that 400 people won't be able to buy into these new quarter acre lot single family homes that'll be built in Pasco, unless you have obviously a plan for some affordable housing that's going to go in along with it. But again, that should be kind of included. And at the same time, that's kind of where I'm going with this, I guess, is that it wasn't the price that you guys came to, it was the process and the way that you arrived at it, because it seemed fishy. When I am here talking to people in Eastern Washington, it's handshakes and eye contact and everybody's your neighbor, and this is just the friendly part of the state from my travels anyway. And the things you see in DC when there's a change of power, I mean, you pass it during a lame duck council. I think on current council, there might be 2 yes votes of the 7 that actually got a vote on this ordinance. Like, why not wait 2 months? I think that kind of sent up a lot of alarms to people. It seemed rushed. There wasn't a talk of the final cost of the house. There was no consideration or like a sister bill or a complementary bill that addressed, I mean, if water is such an issue, why has it been so long since you've adjusted the rate? Why wasn't there a complementary policy in place that was going to address conservation or recycling? A lot of cities are looking at that in the state. It just seemed rushed and kind of forced through with a very limited scope of information that was being released to the decision makers. And then I'll just jump on the bandwagon of the surcharge folks. Leo brings up a great point, but I love your answer. That's really what it's about is we need your water. We want your water, transfer it to us. Otherwise there's a surcharge. At that point, going forward, the whole go back 10 years, why? And again, I would ask, has the work been done? Do you know how much land in city of Pasco that is currently under development or has been applied to be developed would that affect? And do you have the list of individuals, entities, groups that will be getting that surcharge? That's what I'd like to see because it does seem punitive, and it kind of makes me scratch my head like, wow, who's going to get stuck with this bill? So again, maybe a slap on the hand for the process. I think it could have been better and a little more detailed with other considerations in place at the time it was going out there. But that's not for me to decide. But as a representative of people who are stakeholders in the community, I would at least like to see the 10 years just kind of drop off. I can't wrap my head around it. I understand the surcharge and I appreciate the question and the conversations about it, but the 10 years, it doesn't make sense. I would almost worry about legal ramifications of people that had brokered these deals in the past and now have to pay this additional, and they'd say, hey, wait, I thought I was grandfathered in or something. I mean, you're punishing people for beating the system 9 years ago. I mean, good for them. I don't know. That's all I got. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Heyer.
And to set the record straight, the increase in a quarter acre unit per unit is $1,700, as it's shown in the screen.
Sorry, James Sexton again, JMS Construction, Pasco. The $1,700 that you're talking about an increase is to me, the developer. When I take the other hat on and put me, the builder, I just got hit with that and I'm passing that on and adding inflation to it. Right? To me, the next person is getting hit with it too. It's a $5,000 increase. Just so you guys understand that, we're gonna get hit with that. I'm gonna add 25% to it and I'm gonna pass it on to the builder, right? Because I can't eat it, right? And I gotta pay taxes on it, and it's a revenue. So we're gonna turn around and add that, and then the next guy is gonna add it, and then it gets to the home. It's a $5,000 add to a house, just to be clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Harold Worsham. I think you guys are misinformed on, the reuse water that's pumped versus well water. Potatoes, there's a program called GAP, Good Agriculture Practices. You cannot pump the turd water on potatoes. But on the corn and the alfalfa that I see every day, it's the nastiest water you've ever seen. There's not well water going in that on the corn and the alfalfa. That's turd water. I think, tell me if I'm misinformed, but I think you're wrong.
Actually, there is rinse water that is coming from the wells, and the wastewater that is being applied is wash water from processors, and it does not include any municipal sewage water.
It's not sewage
So
water, it's processed water. I call
Right.
it turd water because it stinks really bad. I think you're misinformed. I think you should look into it.
No, but that's a good point of clarification, because I honestly thought you were talking about feces too.
No.
And so, no, even for me up here, I'm glad for the.
I live there and it stinks really bad.
Okay, fair enough.
I think you're misinformed.
Thank you, Mr. Worsham.
I have an additional comment. I remember during the council meeting or the workshop, I think we came up, or we did the math and how much that charge would be for I think 1,600 units. Do you remember? Didn't we agree it was going to be like $4.9 million on that development? And that was just with the 4150 fee. That's not counting if, let's say, all that was done on land that was, with water rights sold.
I do not have that math with me today.
Okay. I want it, so for a quarter acre lot, it's a 2.9, 5 acre feet, times 4150, we came out to that $12,242.50 total fee. I think I took that number and divided it by 4. And then from there, I think we did 400 times 12,242.
We can get back to you.
Okay.
On
Yeah,
that,
like I
Mr.
said,
Perales.
I just really want to make sure that we understand that, millions of dollars would be probably passed down, to a home, you know what I mean? So just things to think about, especially it would go up if it was 50% surcharge on that number. So I think that would be a good thing to just as a fact, that, this would add, based on one of your examples, how much money that would add for that development.
Anybody else? We really want to know. We are here to listen, here to learn, here for your input.
Hello.
Good evening.
My name is Fred Oberding. I'm Alan Oberding's brother. We both farm north of Pasco, and we've had for a long time a water agreement with the Lamb Weston processing plant. So we take their wastewater. And in lieu of the wastewater, we get a guaranteed amount of acres contracted. And I can tell you one thing that they don't do is they do not put wastewater on a potato crop. And I can tell you other things about the wastewater. You can't put it on a new seeded crop like Timothy, sweet corn, or alfalfa. It will kill it. And to put wastewater on a crop, you have to supplement it with about 85% fresh water. So I know that the city of Pasco or the port of Pasco has arrangements with farmers east of Highway 395. And the stench out there is horrible. And so if we're all going to live in this community, you're going to have to do something about that, whether it's a digester or whatever you're going to do. But I think it's when you take it down to the math, excuse me. I'm sorry. When you take it down to the math, it's going to require more water than you're calculating. And I came as a listener, but then things that I didn't agree with, that's why I'm up here. And there was I know the other point was, well, we're still under debate of how much water it's going to take. I was gonna ask you if you would consider leasing, water for a 5 or 10 year lease until you get this thing straightened out, because I think you're a long ways from being straightened out. Anyway, that's my comment.
Okay, really appreciate it, Mr. Olberding. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to his comment a little bit, that's one of the things that I know in a meeting, I've sat down and asked a lot of these same questions with staff as far as, can we, lease for a period with like a lease to own contract? That way, maybe the water rights owner, get some extra money out of it rather than that. And so, you guys, in all reality, we're looking, all options are on the table. We want to consider all these things. That's why we're here before you. So please keep it coming.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Mons, Windermere Group 1. Well, Realtor with Windermere Group 1. So, agree with everything that's been said. My concern is the bottom dollar. We're in an affordable housing crisis, which we all know. And I decided to speak because looking at these numbers, it is super concerning to me that staff truly thinks that the bottom dollar to the end user is the $1794.50. And we have a developer sitting right here saying that's absolutely not the case. And so again, when we go to the timeline of these meetings, and let me just pull it up here. So council workshop 10:10, developer meeting 10:23, council meeting 11:22, which is when I believe this was voted in. That is ridiculously fast. And for us to sit here tonight and say this is one number, it's X to, and then 3 times that to our end user, there were not nearly enough conversations before this was passed. So just really want to stress the importance of making sure that the public is aware, that the stakeholders are aware, and taking our time to make these decisions, because it has a serious impact on our community. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mrs. Mons. And please be assured that's why we're here tonight.
Dave Rutter. Most of the work that we've been doing helping developers has been in Kennewick, not in Pasco. But just from what I'm seeing and hearing and listening to the people talk, in Kennewick we never had to deal with going out and converting farm ground into residential. There was always enough ground to develop. Kennewick's probably about 8 years away from not having any more ground to develop. I hope that you guys listen to the farmers, the guys that know what they're talking about, because this, me sitting here for the first time, this really concerns me with what I'm hearing. Those guys are the pros, and I hope that we take our time and take a few more minutes, just like Jennifer said. That's pretty quick moving on stuff for a municipality. And I hope that you really do sit down and workshop with the farmers here that know what they're talking about. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Yep.
Charles, us farmers would really like to sit down and talk to you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. As Mr. Perales just mentioned, this is pretty much our agenda. We don't have a lot of feedback. We're new to the council. This was, voted on back in November. We are just trying to learn and to understand and to listen. And so we're not going to have a lot of feedback tonight. We're going to take this and visit with the rest of the council and staff and discuss with them, but just really want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak up.
So what are the council's plans going forward? Did they ever put together a committee or?
So we are the subcommittee. Both Mr. Perales and I volunteered to come listen, to try to really just come up with, I guess, just put together what we're hearing from everybody and bring it back to the council. I can tell you there's no formal plans. This is kind of step one, stage one of just coming and listening, trying to, hear from the stakeholders, where they think we got it wrong, where, how we can get it right. And so that we can take that back to the larger body, because to do anything as the legislative body, it takes 4 of us and we're just 2. So.
Yeah. Well, I was under the understanding after that last meeting that they were going to form a committee to go through this stuff of realtors, of all the stakeholders, and then report to the whole council.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I think that's still the general idea. We never really talked about selection process or anything, but today was supposed to just be a meeting, subcommittee meeting where we would talk, we'd see the presentation, talk about water rights again and get feedback. But it was my intention, I think when I kind of brought it up, was to create a committee with stakeholders, farmers, what have you, realtors, people who are affected by this, to come together and come together and find some recommendations and really just set the tone of going forward. Like, we need to slow down with some of this stuff. I've been very transparent with my perspective and the way I approach things, and that's a lot of people on the council too. I'm not gonna speak for everyone, but we do feel like this was rushed. At least I mentioned it when I was still running for city council. I just feel like this needed to be really fleshed out. We need to talk with farmers, anyone who's going to be affected by it, and really understand how this is going to impact, because like Ms. Mons talked about, we are in an affordable housing crisis, and I feel like little things like this, well, these are big things, are impacting that, and it's going to affect us from reaching that goal of 20-some thousand units. We're not going to reach that goal if we're going to put all these barriers and hurdles in front of developers and stuff like that. So that's what this is about. I'm going to say this would probably be the first of many meetings. We really need to make sure that this is that we're going to craft good policy that's not going to impact our goals. If not, then this housing crisis is going to get out of control. So,
that's the reason I asked the question, so we know what to expect down the road. And I'm not up here looking for. I'm not raising my hand.
No, that's good. And, I can tell you guys, yes, to echo Councilmember Perales, we are not through tonight. At the same point, I can tell you what I'm really hoping to hear, though, is answers from the public, too. Give us some ideas, because one of the questions that I asked was, if we're trying to ensure the water has enough, or the city has enough water, and the 50% surcharge is unfair or unequitable, or however we want to word that, then what are our other options? How can we make sure the city has enough? If we throw that out, and that's definitely a consideration, what can we do to ensure the city has for future growth, has water for future growth? And so that's where I'm hoping, even from some ideas from stakeholders and others, how do we ensure that? And I'm not saying it is a challenge. Please don't. I'm literally looking for information coming together. So does anybody have any? Matt, welcome back up.
I just kind of want to piggyback on that. This should not have ever been a standalone issue for kind of a quick fix. It really would work with other policy of recycling or, zero scaping. I've heard you mention that a lot, Councilman Perales, to where it's encouraged or incentivized or something. And even to Jacob's credit, he got the design standards pushed through last year in Pasco, and maybe there's something in there where he could, even with the increase that seems to be kind of a market rate, instead of people getting priced out, maybe he finds a way to kind of encourage a zero-scaped duplex type of community where you can still get people into homes where they can build equity and kind of have that little taste of the American dream. But there's really a lot of answers and a lot of possibilities, and I just kind of go back to the feeling that it seemed rushed and there wasn't enough other consideration of how things might kind of interact with this change on its own.
Awesome, thank you. Deputy City Manager Sigdell, do you have anything else?
None, no questions or comments at this point, Councilmember.
Perfect. Mr. Olberding, welcome back up. Yes, sir. We're here to listen. Yeah, no, this is good.
And I love to talk, so anyway, I just, as I sat back down, I remembered this thing I forgot, is that Harold had referred to it as turd water, and actually my brother was the one that coined that name. Because before the city of Pasco purchased ground out east of 395, Lamb Weston was already taking wastewater from their plant and putting it out on ground. And in time, the nitrate levels in that ground got too high. Phosphates went out of the ceiling along with phosphates. And they were forced to add additional ground to their water spreading agreements. And at that time, my brother and I, we were farming together, and we signed a contract for on irrigable acres, about 900 acres, along with Tomlinson Farms, and that got them enough acres so they were able to spread the product and keep the environmental impacts low enough that the ecology department accepted those numbers, and they also got the odor out of the air because they were not applying day after day to the same pieces of ground. So, but I do notice that because Lamb at the time would mix some fresh water along with the processed water, and we weren't getting near the smell. But I noticed that east of 395, the smell tells me that the city's not mixing any fresh water with that turd water, and it smells like hell. Horrible. And anyway, this is information only. I'm passing along to you, so when we get an opportunity to sit down, that we don't have to re-explain things or tell you something you didn't know from the start. And so that's why I got back up here.
No, thank you again, Mr. Olberding. And that is one of the notes that I made here is I wrote Stench and Ponds in East Pasco. So yes, we are here and we are listening, and we really want to take everything you guys are telling us. And Councilmember Perales and I will visit about. We'll talk with Mayor Serrano about it and with staff about it, of course, and then come up with what would be a viable next step for us. Visiting more with stakeholders. And again, if you guys have answers, if you have further comment that maybe you were a little gun shy in front of this crew here tonight or whatever, email either of us, email staff, please. We really want to know. We really want to learn and hear that feedback. So,
well, I can guarantee you, the Pasco, Washington area is the best place to farm in the nation, because unlike California, we don't have droughts. And unlike the South, we don't have hurricanes. And unlike the North, we don't have freezing weather. We have a 200 plus degree growing days. And that's why you're seeing processors wanting to come in here and secure part of their food supply. And I don't see that stopping. So cities, municipalities, and farmers, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we are intrinsically connected with the farm community here. And no, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
So have you given any consideration to, as it was discussed back in November, that you pretty much had to pass this because you couldn't do an ordinance to repeal it at that time? Have you given any consideration to just simply write a new ordinance to repeal this and then go back to the drawing table and start again? Because it does seem to me that there are some things that between farmers and realtors and developers really do need to be discussed. And I think that would be a great thing for you guys to consider, and I think you may even have enough votes on the council to possibly push that through.
Yes, thank you, John. Go ahead, you were going to say.
I mean, I think that was kind of my intention when I brought up about repealing it, but you have to have an ordinance to repeal the ordinance, what I was told, or you got to have an ordinance in place that's of equal to remove it. So, I mean, I'm all ears for something like that. Again, I feel like we could have done better in regards to getting outreach prior to crafting policy, and that was one of my recommendations, is that when we have something of this magnitude, or really kind of any ordinance change, that we do our due diligence, meet with stakeholders before, rather than being kind of reactive after we pass it, and then we have to start looking into it. That's, again, I'm just speaking for myself on the council, but that was one of my recommendations, and so I think that's still on the table. I think this subcommittee was to hear questions and get comments from the community about this, but I would say that's still on the table, and I'd be willing to bring it to the council, but then we have to have the support in order to put it on the agenda and have the staff craft that ordinance so that we can repeal the current ordinance and start from scratch. Essentially, that would be the process, unless I'm mistaken.
You would be accurate. We would discuss this in the regular council, and whatever direction you have for staff would then go out and follow that direction. And if that direction is to create an ordinance to repeal the past ordinance, then we would go ahead and do so.
All right, well, thank you, and I guess that's where I'll leave it, is we are not through here. Whether it does go that direction, or, immediately or sooner than later, or we just continue learning and hearing from you guys and putting together a meaningful committee where we can craft something that does ensure water for the city for future development, by all means, that's why we're here. So anyways, thank you everybody for being here tonight. It is 7:14 and we will adjourn this listening session. Thank you.